Are you visiting Japan soon? Are overwhelmed by the different ramen options you can pick from? These are 3 other kinds of ramen you should try when you're visiting Japan besides ichiran ramen, which we know everyone knows because of social media. If this has confused you, fret not. It's basically ramen, just without the soup. Now it goes under a lot of different names, but essentially it's just dry ramen with some sort of sauce made out of dashi. And depending on where you go, the noodle texture and the kind of sauce and what it's made from can vary depending on the restaurant's specialty. Like this place in particular specializes in making oil ramen, which are made from pork bones or beef bones. I think it's a great way to try a different kind of ramen because each of the flavor components of the dish is really highlighted through the different sauce that the restaurant is serving. And a lot of times the noodle chosen will be reflective. of the kind of sauce being used. If you see curly ramens, that means it's meant to capture as much as the sauce as possible to give you the most flavor. As with many restaurants in Japan, they tend to offer a very small selected menu, but they all tend to just be clustered around the same area. So if you're looking for something that specializes in a specific kind of flavor, you can go to a restaurant and find maybe 3 different kinds of it. And if you want something a bit lighter, down the road, there's probably a restaurant serving the same thing, so you're never short of options. This kind of dish tends to be very carbs heavy with an array of toppings depending on the restaurant. I think onion, garlics, some bamboo shoots are very much standard across the board, but you can really customize what you want to try. I suggest you throw everything in and try it because I think that's the best way to try these kind of new and inventive flavoring. So this is another version of soupless ramen known as Tsukemen. It is popular in the summer months because you're able to dip your ramen into the broth and it can either be hot or chilled. A lot of places will give you the option to pick from one of them. And the broth tends to be a lot richer and thicker compared to your soup ramen, with the option to add in some soup to thin out the broth after you finish your ramen noodles so they can add some rice to have a form of porridge. During one of my trips to Japan, this was my food hyperfixation for that trip, and I really like it because I get to control how much broth or how little broth I want to eat, and different restaurants have their own specializations for the soup broth ranging from bone broth to more lighter soy sauce based ones. And now finally, some soup. So this is Shio ramen and it's a chicken based broth that is flavored with salt. Sometimes restaurants will add a bit of a citrus element to it to help brighten up the flavor so that it doesn't taste too salty or too chickeny in a way. And often places will give you the option to add sesame seeds, with some places even letting you crush it by yourself to give a bit more of a nutty element to the dish. This kind of broth is very popular in the Hokkaido region and it's very similar to wonton noodles from Chinese cuisine. Restaurants that serve Shio ramen often serve other Hokkaido-based dishes, and they often have their own specialty gyoza as well. While most gyozas tend to have the same ingredients, depending on where the restaurant is from, it can feature ingredients that are more regionally popular. And the same goes for the Shio ramen broth. Some places favor a thicker broth that is similar to tori paitan, whereas other places prefer a very light and clear broth where you can see the bottom of the bowl, and the soup is lightly flavored with salt. And if that's too light for you, well, there is miso butter, where literally there's a pat of butter within your ramen broth. Now, there's so many different kinds of food in Japan, and a lot of them are famous regionally or locally, and it's great that you can find all of them in Tokyo itself. You don't have to travel to those specific regions to be able to try the food because a lot of it tend to be available within the central cities. In essence, a lot of restaurants in Japan are specialty restaurants. They do not have a very extensive or big menu, and they tend to focus on a certain specialty. If a place serves tonkatsu ramen, you're unlikely to find other menus, just different variants of the same dish to cater for slightly different tastes, which means that the food tends to be pretty good because they really focus on honing in their skills for just one specific dish. And the same goes for preparing your own food if you're up to it. different regions in Japan, especially in the north and the coastal cities, have a wide variety of fresh seafood available that has just been freshly caught, most often on the same day itself. And the most amazing part of it is that it's often seasonal, and what you have on offer is depending on the season, and different seasons of food will give different flavors. With that being said, sometimes it's a bit overwhelming with so many options available. The nice thing about Japan is that you're probably going to forget good food. If you want to get bad food, you have to actively go out of your way to find it. In fact, to narrow things down for you, I've made previous videos such as the 8 restaurants you should check out that are foreigner-friendly in Shibuya if you plan to spend an entire day at a place, or 3 unique dishes that I think you should try out when you're in Tokyo. Of course, as someone who loves to eat, I've taste tested all of the restaurants that I've recommended in those videos, and I can verify that they are indeed very tasty and very foreigner-friendly. So since you're already here, why don't you check them out next?